go to Kristie Lloyd now. She joins us from Windsor, northwest of Sydney. Kristie, what are the conditions like there this morning?
Well, it's just spitting here this morning, and we're really starting to see that rainfall easing, which is some good news for this flood-affected community. The river levels along the Hawkesbury River here at Windsor are slowly starting to recede. One thing I have noticed this morning is that the river is a lot calmer compared to what it has been in the last couple of days. It's not flowing quite as fast as we start to see those river levels dropping. For the Hawkesbury-Nepean region, this is now the worst flooding disaster since 1978 as a whole. Further downstream of Windsor, though, around places such as Sackville and for the Lower Portland region, this is the worst flooding disaster that they have seen since 1964. So an incredible amount of water that is flooding these regions. The roads remain cut off this morning. These river levels are dropping very, very slowly. So it is going to be quite some time before many residents can return to their homes. As you mentioned earlier, the evacuation warnings and orders just keep climbing, and it is likely to be some time before we see residents being allowed to safely return back to their homes to evaluate the situation and take a look at, in some cases, what they're left with. We did hear from the SES a little bit earlier this morning, who said that this disaster is far from over.
This threat is not over, it's far from over. Even in Sydney, where we've got the Hawkesbury-Nepean flooding, that river is going to stay high for quite some time. So we're going to see major and moderate flooding in some of those areas through to the end of the week, into the weekend, and in some areas into early next week.
Now, while we are starting to see the major flooding easing here around Windsor, downstream at Wiseman's Ferry, the river levels are continuing to rise there, and we're likely to see a flood peak at Wiseman's Ferry today of major levels. The focus is also shifting a little bit further north today. Overnight, there were multiple air rescues performed around Tugra Lake on the central coast of New South Wales, where major flooding is impacting that region, particularly around the Long Jetty area. A number of residents had to be airlifted to safety, and the SES crews were door knocking with evacuation orders and warnings in place. Further north of that, we also have major flooding occurring along the Hunter River. So the focus is becoming more widespread with this flood situation at the moment. And we're also expected to see heavy rain impacting parts of the mid-north coast today. A severe weather warning area is currently in place for the threat of heavy rain. Flash flooding is likely to be the main risk for areas such as Coffs Harbour and Port Macquarie and across that mid-north coast region. But we could see some river level rises, potentially rising to minor or moderate flood levels. So while we start to see the river levels dropping here around the Hawkesbury region, the focus is shifting north as those rivers start to rise.
That's Kristie Lloyd there coming to us live from Windsor this morning.